Hello, and thank you for joining us today. I'm your host, Dr. Samantha Hayes.
And I'm your host, Dr. Jessica Griffith-Echito, and we are your Resilience and Wellbeing Specialists.
Today, we're diving into a topic that touches every single one of us, whether we realize it or not, and that's internal bias. Now, when we say internal bias, we're talking about those conscious, those unconscious,
Yeah, very big distinction.
very big attitudes and beliefs
Yeah.
that shape how we see the world, the choices we make, and even how we interact with people day to day. Yes, if that's conscious choices, it's something very different.
That's a whole other podcast episode.
Yeah.
And the thing about internal bias is that it's often invisible to us. It runs quietly in the background, but just because it's unseen doesn't mean it's unimportant. These biases can influence how we perceive one's abilities, someone's abilities, not one's abilities. That's such a weird phrase.
I know
But
it is.
I'm reading historical fiction right now. Can you tell? Uh, Someone's abilities, how we build relationships, and even how inclusive we are in even like leadership roles.
Right. And that's why this conversation matters. This episode is really for anyone, whether you're in a workplace, building relationships, or simply wanting to understand yourself better. If you've ever caught yourself making a snap judgment about someone, I don't know how you would not have caught that. This is going to resonate.
Well, even if they hadn't, though, they might now, right?
Maybe now.
Yeah.
Yes. Uh-huh.
So
Yeah.
we're not just talking theory here. Today's episode is built around a practical tool. It's our internal bias self-assessment and companion guide. It's a set of reflection questions designed to help you notice where your bias might be showing up in your life and how to start addressing it.
So stick with us because we're going to unpack what internal bias looks like, how to recognize it in yourself, and what you can do to change it.
So let's jump in.
So let's start by getting clear on what we mean when we say internal bias. In simple terms, it's the mental shortcuts our brain takes. These are unconscious attitudes or beliefs that we hold that can shape how we see people, situations, and yes, even ourselves.
Yep, that's right. So think of your brain like running on autopilot. Over time, we absorb messages that from our culture, our family, from personal experiences. Those messages create patterns, assumptions that we make without even realizing it. That's what forms things like stereotypes or even what we think are gut reactions that we can't fully explain.
And what's tricky is that biases aren't always negative or intentional, right? Like it's not negative in intention. That's what I'm meaning to say. I'm going to fumble my words this entire podcast. I'm just going to put it out there.
Technical difficulties prior to recording always does that.
They're often just automatic. It's those
Right.
automatic things.
Yeah. Our brains are wired to categorize things quickly. And we've talked about this on some of our posts on Instagram and things like that. Categorize and sort quickly. It's part of how we make sense of the world, and it's instinctual sometimes. So
Yep.
the challenge is when those categories lead us to unfair assumptions about people. For example, assuming someone's ability based on their age or thinking you know what role a person plays at work just because of the way they look.
Yeah, I think everybody listening has probably had that moment where you realize like you made that snap judgment about
Yep.
someone, and then
Mhm.
you're like, that wasn't true.
Right? Right? We all do that. And sometimes we catch it and we're like, oh, well, I actually noticed something great about that person. And other times we catch it and we go, oh my gosh, I'm a jerk.
Yeah, yeah,
Like,
yeah,
what was it? Why did I think that?
yeah.
And not really a jerk, but you know what I'm saying? So it's not intentional. We
Yep.
just, It's just what our brains are wired to do. So those little moments matter because bias doesn't just give us, just doesn't live in our thoughts. It influences how we behave, who
Mhm.
we hire, who we listen to in a meeting, who we
Mhm.
include in a conversation. Even something as small as deciding who to sit next to can be shaped by internal bias.
Mhm. So in other words, bias doesn't stay in our heads like we think. It's not like you have it and you're like, oh, well, it's just trapped up there.
Yeah, nobody knows.
It shows up. It shows up
Yeah,
in everything, in our actions, and it shapes how we move through the world.
exactly. But the good news is, once we start to recognize those patterns, we can begin to slow down.
Yeah.
You know, that pause that you love,
Yeah.
question them, and make more intentional choices.
Yeah. And that's such a good point to really get us to slow down. So we're making something
Yeah.
intentionally instead of just maneuvering.
Right.
So let's talk about what awareness actually looks like in everyday life, because it's one thing to understand bias in theory, right?
Yeah.
But it's actually another thing to catch yourself in the moment.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And usually that first step is noticing when you've assumed something about someone, even without thinking it. That
Hmm.
snap judgment. It could be as
Yeah.
simple as assuming someone's interest based on like what they're wearing,
Hmm.
or believing you know how capable they are before you've given them a chance to prove it to you.
Yep. I have caught myself doing that. Like assuming somebody at work might not have so much to contribute to a meeting, even
Yeah.
though like you sit down and they start talking, you're like, whoop, I misjudged that person.
Yeah, right? And it's such a good example because we all do it. I mean,
Yeah.
anywhere. Think about
Yeah.
going to a fast food restaurant. Think about
Yeah.
going to the library. Anywhere you've been, you've made snap judgments about people. It's part of our
Yeah.
internal protection, but
Hmm.
we all do it. And the important part is not pretending that we are above it or immune to it, but instead pausing to say, wait, was that thought based on reality or a stereotype I've picked up somewhere? That
Hmm.
little pause creates space for a different, more intentional response.
Hmm. So catching yourself in the act is really the muscle you can strengthen over time. It's like going to the gym to work out, but this time you're going to work on your internal biases by taking that intentional pause.
Yep, exactly. Exactly. The more you practice noticing those snap judgments, the easier it becomes to challenge them and before they turn into action or
Yeah.
negative action, right? So think about labels we sometimes use, words or categories that lump people together. When we stop and check ourselves, we move from labeling to seeing the individual in front of us.
Hmm. Yeah, and that I feel like is such a powerful shift.
Mhm.
And maybe for listeners, here's a good question to sit with. When was the last time you realized a quick assumption you made about someone was wrong? And
Right?
like,
That's so,
take
yeah.
the minute and
Yeah.
pause and think.
Yeah. And even just preparing for today, I was reflecting over some of this and I was like, I can think of times where later, I mean, it might not happen in the moment, but
Yeah.
later I realized I was wrong about something.
Mhm.
And sometimes that was to my detriment. And
Mhm.
sometimes it was to their detriment where I
Yeah.
did something maybe negatively impactful to them,
Mhm.
or I didn't quite see somebody correctly and then I didn't utilize them or like their talents at
Right.
work or how to help my child in class or whatever like I was thinking
Mhm.
about all the times I've done that. So because reflecting on that moment can teach you a lot about how bias shows up in your own life, it reminds you that while bias is natural, awareness is what gives us the power to change it and change how we act moving forward.
Mhm. I love that because it's like you're talking about two very important things, like the power and the pause and reflection, right? Both of which really
Very
can help
important.
us, yeah,
Mhm.
move forward. So far, we've talked about catching our own assumptions. But there's another piece to this, and that's what happens when we intentionally put ourselves in front of perspectives that are different than ours.
And that is so impactful. I sat here for just a split second longer than I would have because I was like, does everyone feel that impact? Because it's so profound. It's
Yeah.
profound because bias often thrives in the sameness.
Hmm.
I'm going to say it again because I want to make sure it's clear. Bias often thrives in the sameness. If we only listen to people who look like us, think like us, act like us, share our background or our narrow worldview, because that's what we have, our worldview narrows, right?
Hmm.
So we
Hmm.
need to be looking outside of ourselves. So when we step outside of that bubble and listen to voices we wouldn't usually hear, it pushes against those unconscious patterns.
Yeah, and I've been having recently I've had a couple of conversations with people related to this little thing, and the personalized world you actually have here.
Hmm.
Very
Hmm.
personalized, very catered to whatever's already going on in your head
Yes.
because all of
Yes.
the algorithms are showing you exactly what you've shown an interest in.
Hmm.
And so they're going to continue to show you those things. And so our world, instead of actually expanding, is getting smaller and smaller because we're making it so personal with these devices. And like
Yeah.
that contributes to, so much to like further cementing in our bias.
Yep.
Um, anyway, I
Yeah.
also had a conversation recently with someone who has a different cultural background, very different from my own, right? Um, and some, just like that conversation, sometimes I go in and I'm like, gosh, we're so different. Like, what can we even have in common?
Right.
Right.
Hmm.
But honestly, like taking the moment to pause, to connect, to hear their story,
Yeah.
all of those things. Like all of a sudden I'm like, wow, we have way more in common than I thought. Like,
Right. We could connect on so many other levels. And
yes,
that's such a great
yes.
point. Real human connection does what theory alone can't, and
Mhm.
what our cell phones can't, right?
Yes, yes,
So,
yes.
tying it back to what you said before, and
Yep.
it doesn't always have to be this huge gesture,
Hmm.
which, I mean, if we're going to go to the phone route, putting down your phone is such a huge gesture, but it's such a simple gesture too, right?
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
both of it's profound and small. It could
Yeah.
be choosing to read from an author, right? So an author that's different from what you normally read or a different background. Following thought leaders online. I know we're going back to like the opposite of what you said, but who hold different perspectives. So purposefully expanding your
Mhm.
worldview on our little narrow phones that
Yeah.
the algorithms are giving us, or just being curious about a coworker's experiences that don't mirror your own.
Hmm. Yeah. And the more we do that, the more our brain starts to loosen up, right? It starts
Mm.
to shift
Yes.
and stop rigidly categorizing everything and seeing so much more, as gray. Like I like to a lot of times talk about the black and the white, right? And when you're in that rigid, it's black and white. It's like you're here or you're here, right?
Right.
Like you have your little boxes, you put people in them. But then like when you do all of these things, you actually start to be like, there's a lot more gray that goes on in here.
Hmm.
Um, and it really becomes harder to rely on stereotypes then. When you're
Yeah.
actually listening to someone's lived experiences, you're actually opening up your brain and opening yourself up for those connections.
Yep. It's like expanding your lens.
Hmm. Hmm.
Suddenly, instead of seeing just one angle, you're seeing a fuller picture. And that makes you more empathetic, more inclusive, and
Yeah.
honestly, better at navigating relationships.
Yeah. Yeah. So here's the challenge for everyone listening. Seek out one perspective this week that challenges your current thinking. It could be a conversation, a book, or even a podcast from a different point of view, or go finding somebody's account to follow that is
Yeah.
not who you would normally follow.
Right, right. I love that because it doesn't just reduce bias, any of those, they don't just reduce bias, it helps us grow as a person.
Yeah.
And that lays the foundation for stronger communities and more authentic connections.
Yep. So we looked at catching our assumptions and opening ourselves up to different perspective. But here's another piece we can't skip, and that's taking responsibility when bias
Yeah.
slips into our words or actions.
Right, right. Can't skip it. Cannot skip that.
Yeah.
We would be doing a disservice to our listeners if we just sugar-coated that and skipped right over it,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Because no matter how much awareness we build, we're human.
Yep.
There will be moments when we say something that lands the wrong way, or when we act out of habit rather than intention. And when that happens, the most powerful thing that we can do is own it.
Yeah. And that's not always
It's
easy.
not easy.
It typically feels uncomfortable, maybe embarrassing.
Mhm.
There's a whole bunch of other list of emotions I could go through
Yeah.
that might accompany it, but admitting we're wrong can be super hard.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. But here's the thing. Humility is a
Mm.
strength, not a weakness.
Yes.
My favorite leaders led with humility, right? My
Mhm.
favorite people, my mentors growing up, they demonstrated humility,
Mhm.
saying, went back with bias, saying, I realize that my comment or my actions or whatever, fill in the blank, may have been hurtful and I'm sorry, shows respect for that person. It creates space for the trust to be rebuilt and it shows your humility. So most
Mhm.
people don't expect perfection. They just want to know that you're willing to acknowledge that you impacted them and just not, ignore it. So just acknowledging the impact, even if there was no intent.
Mhm.
Yeah.
That's such an important distinction too. Impact versus
Versus intent.
intent.
Yep.
Yeah. We usually don't, I mean, typically go in like I'm going to harm this person,
Yeah, I'm gonna
right?
hurt you today.
But if the impact is there, taking responsibility for that impact does make a world of
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah. And feedback plays a role here too. And you and I worked together for the longest time in the professional world, and we gathered feedback regularly as part of being in a culture, work culture, right? But
Mhm.
feedback often gets a bad rap. We think of
Mhm.
it's just performance review time, but
Mhm.
sometimes we don't see our own blind spots until somebody
Yeah.
points them out. So you
Yeah.
don't just need a written performance review to get feedback, right? You
Yeah.
need it from your trusted friends, your trusted family, those who you find value in their words. If we can receive that feedback without getting defensive, we actually grow from it. So it's a growth mindset in action, and we talk about growth mindsets all the time. Every misstep becomes a learning opportunity instead of a failure.
Yeah. So really it's about shifting from like I have to be
Yeah.
perfect
Mm-hmm.
to I'm committed to learning and doing better, like committing to your growth mindset.
Yep, exactly. And when we do that, we show others that change is possible, and that makes it safer for them to reflect on their own biases too.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, that's such a good reminder. Um, yeah, and I know that this conversation is probably one of our shorter podcasts, shorter, very intentional, um, but really one I feel like can be super powerful
Mm-hmm.
for everyone. Because they can walk away and take like that pause, that growth mindset and that
Yeah.
internal that that reflection piece and go like
Mm-hmm.
do something with it. Get out of your personalized world and get into this one, right? Like
Right. Yeah. And
um yes, yes.
notice our bias. Yeah.
Yes. So we've explored today what internal bias really is, those unconscious
Yeah.
attitudes that can shape how we see people and how we act often without us even realizing it.
We also talked about the power of awareness, catching ourselves in those snap judgments, and how simply pausing to question them can change the way we respond to them.
Yeah. And we looked at the importance of opening ourselves up to different perspectives. Remember, you've had a couple of challenges throughout this podcast because when we step outside of our
Yeah.
comfort zone and really listen, bias loosens its grip.
Yep. Exactly. Yep. We need that on a
I know.
sticky note. A
Loosen the grip,
shirt.
man.
And finally, we highlighted the responsibility and sorry, we highlighted responsibility and growth. Bias isn't something you fix once and for all. It's a journey. And along the way, mistakes will happen. Owning them with humility and staying open to feedback is how we build trust and keep learning.
Yeah, yeah. So here's our simple invitation to you this week, this month.
Yeah.
Maybe it's a goal for next year. I don't really know, but notice one moment when a quick assumption pops into your mind. Pause, reflect, and ask yourself, where did that come from? And then seek out one perspective that challenges your usual way of thinking.
Yeah. Small, consistent steps like these lead to significant change over time, and they
Mhm.
ripple outward,
Mm.
shaping how we show up in our relationships, in communities, and leadership roles or at work.
Yeah. So, thank you for spending this time with us today. If this conversation resonated, we'd love for you to share it with a friend. And don't forget to leave that review. It makes it easier for people to find us and follow us. And of course, make sure to join us next time as we continue to explore the skills that help us grow and thrive. You can connect with us on Instagram at Resilience and Wellbeing to keep the conversation going. We'd love to hear what you're working on and how you're applying these ideas.
And if you want more support, the internal bias self-assessment and companion guide goes deeper into every topic we covered
Mhm.
today. It's designed to help you strengthen these skills step by step with tools that fit into your real life. You can learn more by visiting resilienceandwellbeing.org.
Take care, everyone, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye.